So, since I was big on talking about the Quiet on Set documentary, I decided to check out Demi Lovato's Child Star documentary on Hulu, and it was pretty well done. It was pretty well done. Was it as traumatic as Quiet on Set? No. And I don't think it needed to be because I think it gets the point across without being totally uh, trauma inducing and ruining our childhoods. So basically, Demi Lovato interviews these different child stars: Drew Barrymore, Christina Ricci, JoJo Siwa, Kenan Thompson, Allison Stoner, and Raven. And throughout this documentary, she also talks about her own trauma and her own growing up and child stardom and how it led her down a very dark path, but that she's trying to do better and trying to have hope at the end of the day. And that's really what this documentary is about. Trying to talk about these horrible things that have happened in people's lives when they were children and trying to find ways to fix these problems and trying to get better legislation for child stars, but also to find hope at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? And that is something that I think Quiet on Set kind of missed the mark on because they never gave us anything at the end of the day that we could really attach ourselves to help these child stars. It kind of just traumatized us and then left us for nothing. So you have Drew Barrymore, and obviously we know her from such classics as E.T., Firestarter, and Charlie's Angels, so many others. And she's amazing, and we love her. And we all know that she went through the worst childhood that you could imagine. And you know who I blame for that? I don't blame Drew Barrymore. I blame the adults in the room. I blame her mom. I blame the adults in the room that let a 10-year-old come party with them in an adult environment, giving her copious amounts of alcohol and drugs at such a young age. I don't care if she's in Hollywood. That is way too young. She's not even developed in her brain yet. She's not even developed in anything yet. She's only 10 years old. Like, what are we doing? And like, that is what hurts because it's like these adults were in the room and they were supplying Drew with all of these things and they weren't even looking after her. Anything could have happened. Anything. You know what I mean? And it's really sad. But I'm really happy to see where Drew Barrymore is today and how much she's taken, control of herself and, who she is and is a great mother. And just, I love her story. You also have Christina Ricci, and we know her from things like The Addams Family, Casper, and so much more. And she is one of my favorite actresses of all time, and I love her. And she talked about how when she was younger, she did dabble in alcohol and stuff, and that she did have a father that was a little, crazy. And I didn't know this about her, but basically she said that when her and her mom got away from her house because her father was kind of loopy and he was a failed cult leader. Like he was trying to start a cult or something but failed. Like I was like, what? And then she was like, yeah, that. And then when me and my mom would go off to, Hollywood and go, to my auditions and go, be in this environment, it really saved me and it helped me and my mom have a better relationship. And I was like, interesting. And then she was like, yeah. And Cher, because if you know about the movie Mermaids, which is one of my favorite movies, Cher was like this big supporter of Christina Ricci and really was there for her. You know how Cher is. Cher don't take no mess. And she kind of taught that to Christina Ricci. And that's really important too. Like she had this mentor on set. And Demi talks about how she didn't get to have that growing up. She was just left to the winds because that's what Disney does. And, Christina talks about how, it was hard, when you're a child star, but she was lucky to have that with her. And I think that's super great. Then you have JoJo Siwa. And as much as we make fun of her, I really do think that she was exploited when she was younger by her mother, by dance moms, the whole thing. Like, I just think she was exploited. She was basically worked till the end of time. Like, she is basically a walking product and she doesn't know how to turn that off. And like, I think that she said that now, because she's not doing the stuff she did when she was a kid, but now she's more doing like Snapchat type of stuff, and I think she gets pays off of it. I don't know, but she said that basically she does almost like maybe 500 Snapchats a day, because she like literally Snapchats every single thing she ever does in a day. That's wild, man. Wild. And she's like, it's just, I was a walking commodity, and I am a walking commodity, and I am a walking product, and I don't know how to turn that off. And that's kind of scary, actually. And then she talks about when she first came out and how, basically Nickelodeon made her basically call all the retailers where she was basically all of her like products and stuff were being distributed and stuff, and they made her call them and basically tell them that she's not going crazy. That is so dumb. And then Nickelodeon had the nerve, the gall, and the audacity to not invite her back to the Kids' Choice Awards after she basically ran that whole entire network for like at least like 5 years. She ran Nickelodeon, and then they were like, nah, you really can't come back. Because we aren't going to tell you why, but we know why. It was because she came out and they couldn't have their precious little JoJo Siwa be gay and, give that message to the kids. Like, what? Okay, Nickelodeon. Okay, miss me with the BS. And then speaking of Nickelodeon, we have Kenan Thompson. Now, I know people are going to say, why was he not in the Quiet on Set documentary? But at the same time, I'm glad he was not in the Quiet on Set documentary, because I've been thinking about that documentary a lot. And what I've come to the conclusion of is that that documentary was a few things. It was exploitative of not only the child stars who were in the documentary talking about their trauma and re-traumatizing them, but also to us as viewers. And also, there were people in that documentary who were there, and I'm glad they talked about what was going on. But I also think that that documentary was for the sole purpose of helping a certain person who, yes, their story needs to be told to help other people, but it also was, it felt like it was this, basically people would start to forget about the awful things that this person has done. So yeah, I don't really like that documentary. I think that documentary is BS. But I'm glad that Kenan was on this documentary, because he was able to tell his story the right way. And he talked about how when he was younger, during his Nickelodeon days, and even before that, when he was doing like Mighty Ducks and such, he had this guy who his mom knew from like the church and stuff, and he was in charge of Kenan's finances. And so from the time he got into Mighty Ducks all the way to the ending of Kenan and Kel, he was in charge of the money. And so when Kenan ends Kenan and Kel, he goes to ask for the money, and they're nowhere to be found. Like, he said that he went to go and try to like buy a house or something, and he was in the office with all the people to sign the papers, and the dude who had all his money basically ran off with it, and he had nothing. All that child star work went out the window, and he had nothing, which was awful. That's just awful to run away with somebody's money like that. Then you have Allison Stoner. We know them from the Missy Elliott videos. We know them from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. We know them from Camp Rock. We know them from the Step Up movies, etc., etc. They are amazing. They were a great part of our childhood. We love them. And they are one of the few that are trying to do legislation to help child stars, and we love that for them. But they talk about their trauma and how when they were younger, they also had an eating disorder like Demi, and theirs was more anorexia, and how that affected them and how they saw themselves on screen when they would be on screen, and how that was really a detriment to them. Allison also talks about her time on Camp Rock and how Demi, they were both really close, and that during the time, Demi's star started to rise, and it felt like the rest of the cast could not approach her anymore. And so, Demi started to act like really like awful to the rest of the cast. And so Demi basically apologizes to Allison on that and to the rest of the cast, and about how she felt like, she just had a lot of pressure on her when it came to everything. And then, she was also going through her own eating disorder and the drugs. And of course, what happened on the set of the first Camp Rock, if you know, you know. And it was just a lot. It was a lot for her. And so she was trying to deal with all of that. And so she apologized for that. But yeah, you should go watch Allison Stoner's, basically her series that she has on her YouTube channel called Dear Hollywood. It's incredible, and it's a really, 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 really good watch. So check that out as well. And lastly, you have Raven. Now, I know Raven got on our nerves recently on this app around her and her wife and the interviews and all of that, but we love Raven, and we always have, and we always will. And we know that Raven has been working since she was literally a toddler. And, we know her from, The Cosby Show, Henry the Cooper, Dr. Doolittle films, Xenon Girl of the 21st Century, The Cheetah Girls, That's So Raven, etc., etc. And Raven has always said, especially in interviews recently, that it's getting harder and harder for her to remember her childhood. Like, people will tell her, do you remember being on the Cosby Show set? And she will go, no, I don't remember anything from that time period at all. Like, I literally have blackout of a certain time period up until a certain time period. Like, we're lucky that she still remembers things from That's So Raven, and I think being on Raven's Home has helped with that. But the fact that probably most of the 90s are blocked out and blacked out in her mind is crazy to me. And like, she said that from a very early age, her parents instilled in her that her being on the Cosby Show, her doing like baby modeling and all of that, that is a job. You are making money. If you're not doing good at the job, the money goes away. And she was basically told that this is the job and you got to do good at it because you're making the money. And so her parents never said that she was like technically the breadwinner of that family, but they just told her it's a job and you better do good at it so we can get this money. And that's really wild to tell a child. She didn't really talk about, the traumatization of, making her feel like she was fat during her Disney days or any of that. But like, she talked about the pressure of, I'm on Disney Channel. I am one of the first Black women on Disney Channel to have her own show named after her. Like, that's an immense amount of pressure. And her and Demi talk about, this time that Raven was on the set and guest starred on Demi's show, Sunny with a Chance on Disney Channel, and how, Demi wasn't the kindest to Raven at the time, and just like there was like a lot going on there. And Demi basically explains like everything that she was going through at the time, and Raven is like super sympathetic about it and basically says, I get it. I get it. Like, it's a lot. I probably figured you were going through something just by how you were acting, so I didn't really take it personally. But, you weren't the kindest, but I get it. And, that was a lot, so I understand. And, I think this documentary is really a good watch for everybody because I feel like it really gives you a peek into the curtain of being a child star. And the thing that I think I love the most about this is that they also talk about child performers on the internet. So that has to do with like YouTube and even like at this point TikTok. Like, these are child performers who are on the internet who don't have a cut, a end of day, a stopping point. They are always on 24/7, especially with these like family vlogs and stuff. And it's ridiculous. And a lot of them are being exploited. And I'm glad that a lot of more legislation is being put out there into the, Congress and other things. And like, Allison Stoner is a big proponent of that and doing a lot when it comes to that. And I just think that's wonderful because we need more of that. We need more legislation. We need more laws when it comes to child performers, right? And, they basically go through the history of child performers from like the days of Shirley Temple and Judy Garland and they talk about the Coogan account and all of those things. And so I think this is a really good watch. Of course, Demi talks about her own trauma while she's interviewing, all of these child stars, and she talks about being bullied when she was a kid and about how, she got onto Barney, came back to school, everybody was jealous of her. They basically bullied her, and then they signed this S petition to try to, get Demi to unalive herself, called her ugly, called her fat, all of these things. And that basically led to her eating disorder and her abuse of drugs. And so it's a lot, but it also has funny moments in there, cute moments in there. And so I'm glad that this was made, and I'm glad that Demi made this documentary, and I'm glad people are telling their stories more. And I'm glad that child stars feel emboldened enough these days to tell their stories, because that's important. Because there are young people who are watching these former child stars, and they need to know that this industry is not all it's cracked up to be, that these things can be really difficult and hard. There's fun times, obviously, but there's a lot of trauma that will go into it if you're not careful, and you need to learn about the pitfalls of this industry and how hard all of this can be. So I think this is a really good watch. I recommend it, and I think it's 10 times better than the Quiet on Set documentary, and I'm glad it was made. So thank you very much, Demi, and check it out.